Wow, this is crazy. So Sigma just came out of left field and released a brand new camera when everyone was probably expecting a Sigma FP Mark II, since it's kind of become a cult classic camera and one that I've been using for the past 3 or 4 years now. So I think it's interesting that they're going in this direction, but I wanted to break down kind of the differences between the current Sigma FP and this new one that they've released to see if it really is a successor to it or just a brand new camera category entirely. And this camera, there's one flaw that I really hope that they improved on. This camera has it and it makes it borderline unusable without rigging it out, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So just to go over the similarities of the two cameras, they both use the 24.6 megapixel sensor. It may be the same one in both cameras, but that detail has not been revealed yet. Both cameras are sticking with the L mount from Leica. The autofocus is kind of an interesting thing. They're saying it's hybrid autofocus, combining both contrast and phase detect. It's interesting and certainly a step up from the contrast detect in the Sigma FP. And from people who've used this camera for a long time, they know it's basically not usable for video and hit or miss for stills photography. So I'm interested to see how this improves the experience on the new Sigma BF camera. So in terms of physical dimensions, the Sigma BF is actually a little bit heavier than the Sigma FP, not by a huge amount. It's probably negligible in the grand scheme of it, but it is a little bit heavier and it's longer and wider, but they also managed to make it slimmer. So I'll put the dimensions up on the screen right now. Personally, I think this is one of the best features of the camera. I think it's what really makes it stand apart because it's the smallest camera and also the cheapest camera that gives you the specs it does in such a small body. The screen also remains as a touch panel, so that's something the FP had, which I basically never used just because it was more user-friendly to use the control dial to select items, but that is something that's continuing over to this new camera. Another cool thing that they're leaning into is the different color modes. So the Sigma FP had this, and if I look now, a new one that I don't see on mine is the 709 look, but otherwise most of the color modes are the same ones on the FP that have been carried over. Both cameras do not come with an EVF. So starting with the actual design of the camera, it's claiming that it's the first camera ever that's made out of one single unibody aluminum piece, which I think is correct, but there's no mention of weather sealing. I'm assuming that comes with a pretty high weather sealing rating. And onto what many people would consider was the true strength of the Sigma FP, video specs. Now you have an internal 230 gigabyte memory card inside the new Sigma BF. What does that mean for raw recording? It looks like you actually lose the raw recording that you get externally on the Sigma FP. And it looks like you're only limited, you can only do H.265 and H.264 formats on this new camera, which is kind of a disappointment because I think a lot of people were hoping that they would build upon this, and it seems like a no-brainer to have internal RAW, so to speak, but I know that there's a whole issue of legality when it comes to that. Nonetheless, it would have been great to see a true, condensed version of the Sigma FP where you don't have to rig it up to get that raw recording. They're using the L log, which is the Leica log.
And actually, I think that it's great that they're going with a 10-bit file format, although I do miss that there's not going to be any raw files. I think that it's pretty awesome that we will have a higher resolution 10-bit format to work with. And that's one of the main things that's kind of kept me from using the Sigma FP in a lot of different scenarios where I do want the flexibility of a higher quality file format, but I don't want to go all the way to the 12-bit Cinema DNG RAW files because of the massive storage space that they take up. The Sigma BF now includes, just like that LCD on the right is what they're calling the status monitor, and that all of your settings are a move to that monitor instead of being on just the one main back screen, which is cool because it lets you focus on what you're actually composing in the frame. You're able to just select all of your settings by tapping a direction on the multifunctional dial wheel and pulling up
the most streamlined menu I've ever seen. I like that they even point out that it's a one-finger use, so it seems like this is really tailor-made to just a one-handed operation. You pull it out of your bag and you can quickly adjust everything with one hand. These 3 buttons actually provide tactile haptic feedback. And I just noticed that actually these buttons are recessed. It's kind of similar to the action button on the new iPhone 16 Pro. I don't think that there's going to be an actual mechanism for pushing these buttons inwards like a typical camera would have, but this isn't in fact you're only going to know when you've actuated this button due to the haptic feedback. As for the shutter button, it does look like it has the half press to focus or half press to lock exposure, and then of course it acts as a normal shutter button, but it looks like they are enabling that feature still. So the system menu looks like they've tried to hide it as much as possible, saying that you can access less frequently used settings by going there, and it looks pretty similar to what the original Sigma FP menu looks like, although I really like how they changed it to achromatic, or I guess monochromatic. It looks like it's pretty streamlined, and that's something that I've really appreciated about the Sigma FP is just how simple and unobtrusive the menu system is. I'm definitely glad to see that carried on and even looks like improved upon in the new camera. I really like this idea of submenus. From the video, it's basically like you select your ISO setting and then you can expand that into submenus similar to the AEL function on the FP. In my opinion, I think that's a great move because it lets you select a bunch of other features than you would otherwise be able to use. But if you're still just looking for that quick setting that you want to adjust without diving into the menu, you still have that on the first layer. Then you can go into the sub layer to do more complex and advanced features. It's kind of similar to how, for instance, you have the quick setting menu on the Sigma FP. If you need to dive deeper into the settings, you have this AEL button, which basically opens up the menu. It's a little different from that, where you would still see all of these new settings in a sub-menu with the live view unobstructed. So I think that's a positive move in terms of just a UI design on Sigma's part. And one thing I hope they do improve is some of the quirks that you'll find on the FP. For instance, some settings you can't change while you're recording. Hopefully this new sub-menu system allows you to edit those settings while you're doing a video live. In terms of mounting points, it looks like there's really none on the new camera. I could see on the right-hand side they kept basically a hand strap attachment point for a very small threaded loop. But other than that, there's no 1/4-20 attachment points. And so I think that really shows you what this camera is intended for. It's not meant to be fully rigged out, although I'm sure people might. But it's not meant to be rigged out. It's meant to be all built in, completely internal, kind of favoring portability and ease of use over some of the more professional features that you would find on other cameras. There is one 1/4-20 thread at the bottom, so you can still mount it on tripod plates and use it on tripods or other accessories like that. So I do think that there probably will be a cage that comes out from SmallRig and all the other companies, but it's not meant to be rigged out. It's meant to be all built in, completely internal, favoring portability and ease of use over some of the more professional features that you would find on other cameras. The entire intent of this camera is to remove all the distractions and let it only focus on what really matters, the pictures. So in terms of shutter, it looks like there are actually some changes between the Sigma FP and BF. They're both using electronic shutters, but the Sigma BF has a much higher end range at 1/25,600 seconds to 30 seconds, and the bulb mode going up to 5 minutes. And that's compared to the Sigma FP, which had a 1/8,000 seconds to 30 seconds and a bulb mode going up to 300 seconds. Another thing that looks new to the BF is electronic image stabilization. While technically there's ways to do that on the Sigma FP, it's not very easy to set up and requires a third-party device to collect gyro information. And it looks like they now have this in the BF natively. It's also using a new battery, the BP81 battery, and according to the news, the claimed shots per battery is 260. The Sigma FP, on the other hand, is using the BP51 battery. In terms of connectivity, the FP and BF both use USB-C, but the BF got a bump up to USB-C 3.2 Gen 2, whereas the Sigma FP only had 3.2 Gen 1. However, it looks like that's the only port you get on the BF. There's no HDMI. The Sigma FP has the HDMI micro, and it also has a mic input. That's something that it looks like the new BF doesn't have. Another thing I'm interested in is how they're going to switch between the two modes. One of the things that I really like about the Sigma FP is this button right here. This switch for Cine to still is very intuitive and quick to use, and all of your settings transfer between one or the other. They're different. So if, say, you have a certain profile for still video, for stills, you can switch over to Cinema and have your own profile there. I'm not sure how they're doing it on this camera. There's clearly no dedicated button for that, but I'm sure there's some quick and intuitive way based on how they're setting up the rest of the menu to switch between those two modes pretty easily. So looking into these different modes a little bit closer, the UVC is the same that the Sigma FP had, and the primary use case for that is using this camera as a webcam. And that's something that I personally haven't done because I have the S5 IIX, which also has a great feature for that, but it's something that really just enables even more use cases for this camera and for the new Sigma BF coming out. What hasn't been confirmed yet is if the BF allows for audio pass-through in video mode, for when you're hooking up an external monitor, external recorder like the Atmos, Ninja, or Blackmagic video recorder, Video Assist 5G or 12G. So yeah, that's one thing I'm not clear about is external audio recording. It's mentioned that external microphones are compatible, but I believe the UAC code is for computer recognizing audio when you're hooked it up as a webcam. I don't think that mode applies to connecting an external mic, but the fact that they mention it on the product details page makes me believe that this is in fact a feature. So I've used this camera as just a standalone, stripped down, not rigged out camera several times, and mainly when I'm traveling, and there's always been one problem I have with it. And no, it's not the electronic shutter. There's ways around that. It's fine. Sometimes under artificial lighting, you just have to change the shutter speed to a multiple of 1/50 or 1/60. That's not the main issue. It's also not that the battery life is not amazing, but the big problem I have with this camera, using it unrigged, is just how dim the screen is. And I'm using it on full brightness, but even at that, it's just unusable in daylight. This is something that I really hope this new camera improves upon. There's no EVF built into the BF camera, so that's definitely something that would be a deal breaker in my opinion. There's ways around it on the Sigma FP. Basically, I purchased the EVF 11, and that is more or less essential in my opinion to use the camera for any outdoor shooting without another external monitor attached. But I'm really interested to see what the nits brightness is on this, and I'm already thinking, if I do buy this, because I probably will, how I would attach like a foldable viewfinder like I've talked about in the past, or a foldable collapsible sun hood more so, that would be able to mitigate some of the problems from glare. This screen is very prone to glare, and based on the footage, it's very hard to see because they're obviously under studio controlled lighting when showing off the back screen. But that's something that I'm really going to be looking forward to hearing more about. Along with the screen, the second thing that I really hope they improve is the electronic shutter, and particularly when you get banding, color banding at some artificial light sources. I really want to see. There was apparently some fix or some mode that Sigma had with the FP that was supposed to mitigate that issue, but I looked into it. I don't recall what that mode was exactly, but I really just basically had to set the shutter speed to 1/60 or 1/120, which kind of limited the photography uses. And when I was doing this for local concerts and stuff, it really became kind of a limiting factor for that. It'll be interesting to see how people feel about this camera. I definitely want to try one, and I think it actually has a very practical standpoint in my workflow as a freelance videographer, because I'm constantly wanting to bring this camera out and pair it with my other more hybrid shooter friendly cameras like the Lumix S5 2X. But the problem with this is it really requires a lot to be usable. 2 terabytes of storage minimum for any like live event shooting, because it just chews through memory like crazy. So for me, I think I'm probably going to pick this up and just use it for the 10-bit L-Log 6K and 4K opportunities that it has. Per the announcement, it looks like both the black and silver version will retail around $2,000. And this has me a little conflicted, because I think for that much money, you could be getting something with a lot more features packed into it. We'll have to see. I'm kind of curious how this breaks down, but right now I'm a little conflicted. That price does seem a little high, and for just a little bit more money, you could be getting into more of the pro-level cameras, like the entry mid-level cameras like the S5 2X that I have, that I'm recording on right now. So yeah, it's a little bit of a mixed bag for that. I definitely think that it's a really unique design and just like a beautiful camera, a beautiful piece of art on its own, but it doesn't merit that much money. That remains to be seen. Overall, I think this is a really interesting move from Sigma, because it kind of goes in line with something from Leica, like the Leica Q series or Ricoh GR3, GR4, where you have just that really stripped back, streamlined approach, but with this new Sigma BF camera, you can actually use interchangeable lenses. And I think it'll be hilarious to use something like the 24-70 S Pro from Lumix, which would just be completely overpowering for that camera. But the point being, you'll have a lot of different options than you would with a fixed frame, with a fixed lens camera from the other companies. So I think it's kind of their take on that approach, where you're still able to have the flexibility of interchangeable camera lenses. Let me know what you think about this camera that they just announced in the comments, and if you're interested in seeing how I use my Sigma FP for videography and other cinematography workflows, check out this video.